before I begin, thank you. I now open the Governance Advisory Committee on the 10th of February at 6:45. Could I please ask Councillor Said to read the Acknowledgement of Country? Okay, can I please have Councillor D'Souza to read the Acknowledgement of Country?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the land of the Bidjigal and Gadigal peoples who occupied the Sydney coast, being the traditional owners. On behalf of Randwick City Council, I acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders, past and present, and to Aboriginal people in attendance today.
Thank you, Councillor Said.
Almighty God, we humbly beseech you to bestow your blessings upon this council and to direct and prosper your deliberations to the advancement of our glory and the true welfare of the people of the city of Randwick and Australia. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. I will now read the chairperson's announcement. In accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, I advise that this meeting is being live streamed via Council's website and a person's image or voice may be broadcast. The live stream recording will be published on Randwick Council's website for a minimum of 12 months after the meeting or for the balance of Council's term, whichever is the longer period. Attendance at the meeting is taken as consent by a person to their image and or voice being live streamed. All present should refrain from making any defamatory comments or releasing any personal information about another individual without their consent. Council accepts no liability for any damage that may result from defamatory comments made by persons attending this meeting. All liability will rest with the individual who made the comments. This meeting must not be live streamed or recorded by others without the prior written consent of Council. Individuals acting in a disorderly manner can be asked by the chairperson to leave the meeting. I now move to apologies and granting of leaves of absence. I believe there are no apologies. There is one request to attend the meeting by audio-visual link. I've received one from Councillor Hamilton to attend tonight's meeting by audio link. Could I please have somebody move the motion? Moved Councillor Gordon, carried by Councillor Martin on the basis of sickness. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Before we move to the first item on the agenda, Councillor Hamilton, can I just confirm that you can hear and see us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Just because where you are, you're actually quite small for me because I have a large PowerPoint presentation. If you do have a question, and I don't acknowledge that you do have a question, just call out question and I'll then take a note and to put you on the list for a question. Thank you very much. All right, we now move to the first item on the agenda, GAC1/26, the draft budget and long-term financial plan. Can I please have a mover to move that it is read and noted? Moved Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Willington. And I'll now let the staff go over to the podium. The first question, which I'd like to ask of the staff is, could you please elucidate or elaborate on your report? But I'll give you a few seconds to get over there. Yep. Thank you. Just before we do start, can I just confirm, are there any declarations of interests or pecuniary interests? If at any point a declaration arises that you would like to make, please interrupt the proceedings and I will take it. Mr. Wong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide you with an update to the progress of our draft budget for the 26-27 period. The draft budget incorporates the latest economic assumptions. It incorporates the latest council run rates for revenue and expenditure. It incorporates draft pricing schedules and forecasted demand for council services. The budget presented tonight is balanced and is financially sustainable. It's able to withstand some minor economic shocks and some unexpected minor variations. Notwithstanding this though, any increases in capital, any increases in new events, new initiatives, increases in scopes of additional activities will need to be funded. It will be generally funded through increase in revenue streams, a reduction in expenditure, stopping, delaying, or revitalising some type of service. Maintaining this discipline is essential to ensure that this council remains financially sustainable. Now, our agenda consists of several topics tonight. First of all, I'll outline our financial management principles, which really guide and underpin our budget and long-term financial plan. Based on these objectives, I'll highlight some key observations in the draft budget, including some major assumptions and how they compare to our current year. At a headline level, I'll walk through the income statement and I'll walk through our balance sheet, looking at major movements. I'll also conduct a risk analysis to look at the robustness of our assumptions to see if they withstand some sensitivities. Following this, I'll hand over to Todd, our Director of City Services, who will present the Capital Works budget for 26-27. And then Katie, our Director of Community and Culture, will go through the initiatives and events for the same budget period for your consideration. These are the final financial management objectives that underlie our budget. In achieving these objectives, a number of things need to happen. First of all, we need to have a balanced budget. A budget that is fully funded. It can pay debt as and when they fall due, and also the repayment of any loans outstanding. We must monitor, we must manage, and we must ensure our reserves, both internal and external, are adequately funded. We must also meet all our Office of Local Government benchmarks. And these benchmarks pertain to things like financial performance, asset management, and liquidity. We also must identify our financial risks and ensure those risks are mitigated against at an acceptable level for council. Some key observations in the budget include a core capital expenditure program of $39.8 million. This is fully funded in the budget. The core capital program has increased year on year. Domestic waste charges are to be set at 5%, and this is really consistent with the Council's cost recovery approach and also consistent with our long-term domestic waste strategy. Council borrowings initially were $33.5 million from T Corp at 2.2% over a 10-year period. We are now at the midway point, and all debt repayments have been factored into the budget. So far this year, there have been a number of council resolutions that have had a financial impact. Some are operating, some are capital, some are one-off, and some are recurring. These have been factored into the budget. So the one-off ones and the recurring ones have been factored into the 26-27 budget. The reoccurring ones have been factored into our long-term financial plans. The budget remains balanced and sustainable, with a net positive result before capital grants and contributions of $1.3 million. Now, Council consistently monitors economic conditions using information provided by the Reserve Bank of Australia, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, publications, and our investment advisors. These inputs form part of our assumptions into the budget. Recent Reserve Bank forecasts indicate that inflation is expected to be in the 2 to 3% range in the medium to longer term. And these economic conditions do have an impact on Council. They impact Council's purchasing power. They impact the level of economic activity in our LGA. They have an indirect pressure on our awards, and also have an impact on our pricing. Interest rates have a direct impact, particularly around our investment income. So say, for example, 100 basis points increase or decrease in interest rates, that could have an impact in Council's revenue by around between $1.6 million and $1.8 million. This is why the budget is really based on quite conservative assumptions, and there's ongoing monitoring of the budget throughout the year, either through the QBRS, the Quarterly Budget Review Cycle, or much more frequently if economic conditions do change. Now, this slide shows the key movements in assumptions between the 2 years. So on this column here, the budget for 25-26, this is the budget we're operating on right now. And it's comparing against the draft budget for 26-27. So CPI is expected to be 2.95%. And that's based on forward estimates published by the Reserve Bank. And it's the expected inflation over that budget period. The rate peg is set by IPART, and it represents the maximum increase Council can apply to its general rates, and that's at 5%, which includes the population factor as well. User fees and charges are set to increase by 3.85%. This reflects the underlying cost base of the Council. Employee costs are guided by the local government award, in which our estimates are 5.34%, including step increments. Superannuation has been set at 12% as per legislation requirements, and materials and contracts are assumed to be at least in general around CPI if it's applicable. Interest rates assumptions are based on the RBA cash rate and our investment advisors. They're indicating ranges between 3.75 to 3.85, really depending on the product type, the quantum invested, and the duration invested. What you see on the screen here is the Council's draft income statement. The top section here highlights the Council's main categories in operating revenue. The bottom section is the operating expenditure and the major items there. The difference between the two is the operating result before capital and grants of $1.3 million. A significant contributor to the increase in revenues is our rates and annual charges. It reflects a 5% increase based on our rate peg. The environmental levy, also in this line, works off the same principles. And the domestic waste has also been increased by 5%, which is consistent with the Council's cost recovery approach. User fees and charges have increased by a base amount of 3.85%, and that's excluding any volume increases or mixing increases. And this aligns to the Council's current run rates, operational performance, and forecasted demand. One notable observation in this line is the Des Renford Centre, which is forecasted to reach 1 million visitations for 26-27. And this coincides with increased utilisation, increased demand, and the introduction of new classes. Budgeted investment revenue is expected to increase compared to the current year. This increase is based on conservative assumptions. The the main assumption is continued tight cash flow management, the prudent use of longer-term investments, if applicable, and the appropriate use of high-yield investments in line with our investment policy. The financial assistance grants are budgeted to be in terms of the same quantum as this year, but you can see the amounts move a little bit more, and this is more due to the timing recognition and accounting recognition standards being applied this year. Employee costs have increased in line with our assumptions relating to local government award and step increments. The full impact of these movements in employee leave entitlements have been taken into account in the budget. Borrowing costs is slowly declining in line with the Council's amortisation schedule with TCorp, and overall debt is reduced. Materials and contracts have increased based on a combination of CPI, PPI, which is a producer price index, or individual supplier pricing. Some of these increases are reflective of higher service demand, higher use of our facilities, and higher population growth in our LGA. Other operating costs have also increased due to the increased investment in our general community program, which will be discussed a little bit later in our presentation. So this is an example of sensitivity analysis and our risk management approach. It's really to test a what-if scenario and to understand how small changes in our key assumptions impact the Council's financial position. So for the 26-27 period, we've tested a number of assumptions with particular focus towards the award and interest rate outcomes. So for this example, with the award at 4.5%, the net operating result is $1.3 million. The first scenario is if that award was to decrease by 0.1%, so instead of 4.5, it's 4.4, you'll see the net operating result move from 1.3 million to 1.4 million. In scenario 5, if there is a 0.5% decrease, so the award is not 4.5%, it's 4%, you'll see the net operating result move from $1.3 million to $2.6 million. On the other hand, if the award is not 4.5% and it's 4.6%, as in scenario 6, you'll see a net operating result reduce from $1.3 million to $1.2 million. On the extreme sense, in scenario 10, if the award is a 0.5% increase, being 5%, we'll see the net operating result move from $1.3 million to nearly break even with a little slight deficit. Another sensitivity is interest rates, outcomes, and impact on investment income. This is the assumption around if our average rate for our returns is 3.8%, we will achieve a net operating result of $1.3 million. If there's a 25 basis point increase from the 3.8, our net operating result will move from 1.3 million to $1.7 million. In scenario 3, if there's a 75 basis point increase, it will move from 1.3 to $2.5 million. If in the scenario 6, it decreases by 75 basis points, it will move from $1.3 million to pretty close to break even once again at $94,000. So this analysis provides us with a degree of assurance that the budget is manageable under moderate changes in market conditions. And there's a reasonable comfort level that the budget can withstand some minor variations in key assumptions whilst remaining financially sustainable. Now, this slide looks at the balance sheet of a council and really demonstrates our financial position being quite stable. Total assets are forecasted, projected to increase due to continued investment in our infrastructure, property, plant and equipment. There's a strong level of current assets, which includes cash and cash equivalents. which provides the council with liquidity to manage day-to-day operations and to manage our future capital commitments. On the liability side, the council's position also is quite sound. Total liabilities increase only modestly, and that's due to normal movements in our accounts payable and also movements in employee leave provisions. Our borrowings continue to decline, as agreed with the T-Corp amortisation schedule, and our non-current debt steadily declines over time as well. Overall, the balance sheet really demonstrates a sustainable financial position, supported by adequate liquidity and reduced debt profile. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, one of the key aspects around financial sustainability is how well the council manages its reserves, both internal and external. And one of the key reserves the council has, an internal one, is the employee leave entitlement reserve. The council holds approximately about $11 million in cash set aside for employee leave entitlements, and this is really measured against provisions for annual leave and long service leave for our employees. There's a cash coverage of 40%, which has been really consistent over a number of years. This coverage is not arbitrary. As you can see on the slide, the council has a lot of its workforce over 50 years old. And in some cases, in the 60 to 90 age group, it's actually increasing. And it's also increasing in the over 70s. So we take the assumption that any employees over 70 years old, we provide 100% cash coverage. 60 to 69, we have 70% cash coverage. 50 to 59, we have 60% cash coverage, and 40 to 49, we have 50% cash coverage. And the remainder of the workforce has 10%. These assumptions and this type of cash management really provides a buffer to manage expected retirements without placing pressure on future budgets and also present cash flows. So it's a really good way to demonstrate the importance of managing, monitoring, and making sure that your reserves are adequately funded. The core capital works funding, I'll hand over to Todd, our Director of City Services.
Thanks, Stephen, Mr. Mayor and councillors. I'll talk to the draft 26-27 capital works program that you will receive in your budget pack tonight. Just before I get into the particulars of each asset class, year on year we just give a bit of a background as to how we develop the program in its entirety. So each year, where do the figures on the screen come from? You can see there that the total capital works budget has slightly increased to 39, just under 40 million for the proposed draft coming budget, a slight increase from last year's, the current year's capital works budget. So each year, with all the budgetary figures and considerations that Stephen just mentioned, we're given a funding envelope which is considered of the gap between council's income and its expenditure to be able to fund capital. With that gap that we fund capital with, council has an obligation to renew our existing assets at a greater rate than what they're depreciating. So we've got to look after what we have got on the books, so to speak, before we start building new things. And what does that mean in terms of the figures you can see on the screen here now? Stephen also mentioned on the income statement an expense of depreciation. So council has, we've mentioned in the past, over $2 billion worth of assets, majority of that being infrastructure related assets, and each asset has its own life cycle and depreciates at different rate. We've used the analogy, if you were to drive on every single road from here to Canberra, council would be responsible for that, the maintenance and the condition, the upgrading, the renewal of every single road from here to Canberra, the equivalent distance, the same with curb and gutter, 10,000 pits and pipes. So when you put all that together, council maintains an asset register of all of our assets that we own inside that $2 billion. And the Office of Local Government has requirements, if you like, or guidelines by way of ratios, key performance indicators that all councils across New South Wales are required to meet to ensure or give council and the community knowledge that we are looking after what we have. And that requirement to maintain our assets is not getting away from council and causes an unnecessary liability to the community and our financial statements. So the funding envelope we've been given this year is just under $40 million to be able to deliver capital. When we look at all of those assets that I said council is responsible for, the expense this year that we're required to spend on replacing our assets is about $30 million. So with that $30 million, we attribute that across each asset class. Council has 4 asset classes, as you can see on the screen there: buildings, open space, roads and drainage. Each depreciate at different rates, each have different life expectancies, and each perform very different functions for the community. So we don't just randomly pick what we spend. There is a method to the allocation of funding from that envelope to each particular asset class. So that $30 million depreciation, that's an expense just like wages and overheads and materials and contracts. We need to make sure that that is expended accordingly across those asset classes. So just to give a rough example, the depreciation for this year's building program was roughly about $8 to $9 million. So we're spending $10 million, which is just over that. So we're renewing $9 or so million worth of our building assets. And we've got a gap there to spend on new. So those targets, those indicators are set so councils across the board are not building brand new things and forgetting about our current asset stock and making sure that they're still serviceable for the community. So assets are lumpy. If I can turn council's minds back, we refer to them as a lumpy curve, if you like. It's not a linear approach, so it's not $10 million every single year for buildings. If I turn councillors back a couple of years, you would have remembered the buildings figure there was about $50 million because we had Heffron on the books. This year, drainage has gone up by $4 million because we have Coogee stormwater on the books. So you won't see a linear approach to each year budgeting. You get it's roughly similar. Always our capital works sits around the $30 to $35 million mark as a rule of thumb for councils to be aware of, but it'll be slightly different each year depending on a range of asset related and external related factors. So all in all, a pretty consistent program this year, but with the addition of the Coogee stormwater harvesting project, you'll see a slight increase in drainage. To talk now, councillors, to the specific program, I'll start off with the building asset class. And what I will do, obviously we have the opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation as per the Mayor's instruction, but I will talk to some high-level projects that we expect to deliver in the financial year or commence delivery of. So this program is considered of projects both to start construction and projects that remain in planning. Projects that remain in planning or we seed funding, if you like, for future years. As an example there, South Maroubra Surf Life Saving Club, for the $1 million funding allocation, there's no expectation to start South Maroubra Surf Life Saving Club in this current financial year. We'll continue on all our planning and design projects. So when time has come to deliver that project, in line with the project life cycle, we can do so. So we seed fund up until we're able to deliver. But to call out projects, councillors, that look to be commencing construction in the 26-27 financial year, we have Snape Park amenities. We have Malabar Ocean Pool amenities, which has been on the books for a number of years. Malabar Ocean Pool amenities was ready for construction last financial year, but just with funding availability, we're in a position in the 26-27 financial year to commence construction. That goes as well with the Malabar Library and Memorial Hall. So 2 projects that have been on council's books for a number of years are ready to commence construction. We hope at the end of this the 26-27 financial year to have Maroubra Surf Life Saving Club underway. So development application process is well underway. We've submitted everything to the team, and we hope to hear back in the next few months on hopefully an approval on that project. But the project's still running full detailed design construction package, so we're not far off going out for the very first procurement phase for a builder for that project. So we've got an exciting year ahead for that. Coogee Surf Life Saving Club, the final funding allocation to commence works there for the bottom floor of the project. Wiley's Bar's deck replacement from an asset perspective is at its end of life. So the timber decking structure and some of the structural elements below the decking, are at their end of life and need intervention now. And council last year allocated $500,000, and we've carried that over to this year for another $500,000 to get at least two, I think, of a 5-stage approach to the decking structural elements replaced out there. Building renewals, we've continued allocations towards Lexington Hub. We've got an allocation for one of council's leased buildings at Boyce Road that needs imminent repair. Similarly to Maroubra Beach Pavilion, the leased premise down there next to our lifeguard office and Surfing New South Wales with the cafes has some roof leak issues that we're going to repair. The remaining projects, councillors, are all in the presentation that are looked to be carried over for planning and design. In terms of open space, councillors, a few projects to call out on the list up on the screen. We are still continuing to fund the first project again in the Maroubra Beach Master Plan, to run concurrently with the Surf Club project will be the Maroubra Beach Playground, which is a significant or a larger scale project on council books. We're just looking at a implementation strategy, if you like, to commence works at either the same time during or at the end of the Surf Club project. We're just working out what's best for the community. We don't want to have a site compound out there the size of a Maroubra Surf Club size project and then open up the Surf Club and then do another compound for the playground. We're trying to do it all in one hit to mitigate fences being up on Maroubra Beach for an extended period of time. We have the tree planting program. So the tree planting program, the Urban Street Garden program, the Green Grid Connection, the Town Centre Water Sensitive Urban Design are all projects that will be considered concurrently. We're in the process, councillors, of still looking to implement 1,000 trees a year. We've done 300 trees to date in the current financial year, another 100 just about to go in, with 600 trees being identified in an asset identification process, which I believe is just finished. So we're imminently about to get our location of our next 600 trees and the 1,000 trees thereafter. But all in all, with this year's funding and last year's funding, we're well placed with the budget allocations to deliver those 1,000 trees for this year and the next year as well. We have an outdoor gym, councillors, at Bangor Park in Coogee as a result of the order of sequencing of council's previous resolution. We will install the next dog off-leash fenced proposal, not completely fenced park, but again in line with council's proposal at Snape Park on the northwestern corner. We're looking to install a fence that's more conducive to dog activity there. Not a completely enclosed area, but something that council asked us to look at, and a boundary fencing spec that stops a dog running onto a road. So Snape Park will be next year. The coastal walkway, we're not far off commencing Cusco, and in conjunction with that, we'll be coming to council in the next meeting or so on a proposal to reactivate, if you like, the entire coastal walkway and the golf courses. We're in discussions, just looking at essentially where we start first from planning and design again for that, plus the wayfinding strategy of coastal walkway and the LGA is all considered in that project. And the outdoor gym, the half court multi-purpose program will have a half court going in this year. Just a point to note, councillors, the Fisherman's Road site remediation project, I believe council officers either just provided an update on that project or soon to provide an update on this project. This is a project, one of our last landfills, and we talk about it every year. It's been on the books for a number of years, but it will be a considerable scale project on Malabar foreshore, if you like, on the northern peninsula, just outside the Cindy Water entrance and the car park there on Fisherman's Road, and the entrance to the walking track. There is a large parcel of land there that requires remediation, and we're in planning and design for that, but we have been funding allocations year on year. So when the time comes, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 years, we're ready to build there and essentially turn that space as it currently stands between the car park and the federal land, I believe, there into passive recreation space. It's a nice landscaping for the community to use. In terms of roads, roads is not the easiest program to glorify. It's one of our biggest renewal targets year on year, but it's largely dictated by our asset data. So our condition assessments of roads will tell us what roads we need to work on. There's a lot less discretion in this particular asset class. So our local roads program, our roads to recovery program, our regional grant program, road rehabilitation and bus routes, council officers develop an asset program to renew our road surfaces in and around the LGA based off condition. So we look at what roads are performing the worst, have the most potholes, the most wear and tear, and we essentially spend quite a few million each year in going through and resheeting our roads. We have on this slide to call out, councillors, I would say the Maroubra Junction streetscape improvements is a big project. So we have completed in the last few years the Oasis in the middle of the Anzac Parade. We have just completed or near completed the Pacific Square segment. The last piece of the puzzle for the Pacific Square segment is the light pole, the one standing light pole that stands within that segment, and we held that off because the opposite side of the exact same segment, but on the eastern side of the road, in front of the shops, and if you remember where the old RTA entrance is, and the shopping centre there, that is the next segment to be done in looked at in this financial year, along with undergrounding power lines. So we'll come back to the other side, Pacific Square, and drop that one while we do the eastern side as well. Staff are working tirelessly to get started in the next few months the Maroubra Road Corridor program, which is Cooper and Mons first cab off the rank, and what we have done is expedited Flower Street, which is an intersection which was a few intersections down on the priority list, but given that we're going to be out there and somewhat disrupting the network, we thought we'd just do it concurrently. That process is in design now, and we're looking at what we can commence essentially with our procurement process to go out. We've got roughly about $3 million in the budget now to commence work, so that will definitely get us through those two. We've earmarked as well the next stage to go. There was nine sites on that corridor. We're looking to try and just roll through them as well concurrently. And then last but not least, councillors, drainage. We have this year, which is not listed there, a GPT, just for councillors' knowledge, that is, we have somewhat 30 maybe GPTs, sorry if that's wrong, but it's not far off that. And we have the ability to deliver 1 to 2 every 1 or 2 years with our new process. We've got those earmarked on an asset strategy. We've been able to put in about 3 or 4 brand new GPTs, which is really good for our beach water quality and our drainage network. The next one being on Maroubra Beach. So this year, it doesn't say it there, but it's pretty much a north end roundabout. We have a large GPT up there that we're looking to replace. And then importantly, and finally, the Coogee Stormwater Diversion Project as listed there. We've got, just to explain to councillors, $4.8 million in the budget, but that is the last allocation to deliver the project. We already have there's an asterisk, and it might be small font in the screen, but within the budget paper, we have that the 4.8 that we're budgeting next year, in addition to the grants that we already have in the bank. Equates to the $7 million project. So in the next few months, we were ready to commence that project. I'll now hand over to Katie to go through the next few slides. Thank you, councillors.
No, so what I will do is I've got you down, Councillor Veach. We'll go to Katie, and then we'll come back and we'll do all of the questions. Are there any other questions which, just so I can take a note while we're at, let's go to a question from Magna, Rosenfeld, said. Okay, thank you. Well, I'll come back and take further answer. Please continue to elaborate on the report, Director of Community and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councillors. I am going to present some slides to you this evening on proposed budgets for events and also for community development. The next couple of slides are going to be presenting on the proposed funding in delivering council's events, as well as implementing initiatives from council's economic development strategy and arts and culture strategy. Really, with these budgets compared to last year on this page, or mostly what we're looking at is just budget adjustments based on actual spend. You will see that the highest event budgets that we have also attract the highest attendance. They are our largest public outdoor events, and they also correlate to the events when we're evaluating that the community are rating as highest or are most well known and well recognised. In 26 and 27, we also have the addition of the Multicultural Festival added there now as an annual ongoing event. The main call out on this slide really is the increase to the Coogee Corroboree, which we based on actual spend for this financial year. What we're seeing with that event is more people attending. It's now programmed into a range of schools from preschool, primary school and high school. So we're seeing a range of students attend, and it's part of the events that they're doing for National Reconciliation Week. So we have really scaled that event to cater for the different audience that we're seeing, as well as the general community for a longer period of time, and for the entertainment. The event service level review and the access audit will be completed in this financial year, so there is no ongoing budget allocation for them in 26-27, and the Hanukkah event has been added now as an annual ongoing event also. So moving on to the economic development strategy budget, the Christmas in Randwick is being maintained, and does have the largest allocation of funding for that. We have done some evaluation of that program with the chambers and businesses who have provided very positive feedback to us on that in the decorations and the activation around vibrancy in our town centres and our beaches at a time where our visitation is at our highest. And we also have been able to track through data high increases in spending in December also. Another change here is the alfresco dining program. So previously in the last budget, the spot on and the on-road dining was allocated in the same budget. The spot on festivals have now been split out as their own budget line. So the on-road dining has an allocation, as well as the spot on having its own allocation. We have also increased the Amplify music program from being just a summer program to be all year round now, which is why there's an increase there for that budget. The spot on activations will happen again in 26-27, both through an allocation of funding from council and the grant as well. And we also have some funding in there to explore a new open street cultural community event in a new area too. Just move on to the arts and culture budget now. The arts budget remains the same as a total figure, but there has been some redistribution amongst the projects here. Notably for Blenheim House, there's been an allocation and increase there, with us expecting that will open in late 2026. So there's an allocation of budget for some operational bits and pieces for costs that we'll need to open that up as a cultural centre. The usual cultural activities that have been well attended, such as the Town Hall takeover and the Barrett House, will continue there as part of the arts programming. The cultural activities is an outcome of the arts strategy, and that aims to diversify where our cultural events are being held in venues across the LGA, and also looking at outdoor spaces also. It's also important to note that whilst this budget remains the same, the arts team can also access the public art budget, which is in the Capital Works project, which they will be looking at as part of public art, murals and other projects that they have in the plan for next year. So I'll just move on now to the general community budget. This is an overview with proposed budget allocation for the community program activities, the community contributions and the community investment program. Projects here remain fairly similar. Again, there has just been some minor adjustments for tidying of figures or redistribution amongst the portfolios in the community team. The, I guess, significant addition here is for the reconciliation action plan for us to be able to deliver on the outcomes that were endorsed for the community. And we've also got an allocation there for the community safety plan and some programs for targeted early intervention and youth would be the significant changes for this slide. These community contributions are the annual regular donations that council makes, and these are covered either by an MOU or an agreement or have come via a council resolution. These include some new budget allocations at the bottom there. Other than that, they're fairly consistent with what is in an agreement that we have and consistent with last year as well. This is our community investment program or our grants program. There are 4 streams here that we're looking at. Pretty much these funds have just had CPI added to them. These allocations include cash funding as well as fee waiver for venue costs or fee support. There are 3 rounds currently for the Community Creative and the Community Connect rounds, and the community partnerships happen annually. It is just important to note that this proposed budget here is in the context of a review that we will be undertaking in the next couple of months, which will also consider a social impact assessment and also include a review of the guidelines to ensure that the program is meeting our local area priorities. That's it for me. I'll hand over to CFO.
Thank you, Katie. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, one of the key aspects to financial sustainability is how well the council manages its Office of Local Government indicators. As you can see, there's 3 main indicators. Financial performance, which is on top of the table, which looks at operating performance ratios, own source revenue ratios. It also looks at liquidity ratios and debt management ratios. On the next slide, it looks at asset management ratios. As you can see through the results, the council is performing at or above required indicators with strong liquidity, manageable debt levels and effective revenue collection with a sustainable asset position through our capital program. So from here, the draft budget will be reviewed further in the next Governance Advisory Committee that's going to be held in March. It will be reported back to Council in April. The draft will then be made public for community feedback and consultation. The feedback will be then taken into consideration prior to be finally adopted by Council in June 2026. So in summary of this presentation, the draft 26-27 budget meets the Council's financial management objectives. It aligns to Office of Local Government benchmarks, and it maintains the capacity to manage known risks and to a certain extent emerging risks. I look forward to the Council's feedback as we move through to the next stages of review, consultation and finalisation. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have questions from can I just confirm there are no further staff components? Great. I have questions from Councillors Veach, Magna, Rosenfeld and Said, Willington. Are there any further questions? Once I've exhausted these, I will offer another opportunity. I don't wish to close it. Councillors, before I go to Councillor Veach, what I might suggest is that as this is a meeting, you just ask your question succinctly. What I will do though is if you have a directly related follow-up, I will allow it. Any more than that, I'll go to the next one. And if you have any further questions, I'll come back to you at a later date, just so that everyone has a fair ability to ask a question. So, Councillor Veach. We're in a meeting.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Actually, I had a question for Todd Clark, please.
Director of City Services.
Director of City Services. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I actually had 3 questions, and I don't expect you to elaborate on them in huge detail, but they are probably something it'd be good to get, and I appreciate the information you also sent through. One is about the SES project. In the information, is it okay to refer to the information in the responses that were sent through? That's not confidential,
that's fine.
is it? Obviously I understand that the new SES building is supposed to be completed in about 2031. I could be wrong about that. That's a figure that I think was mentioned at some point. We don't have a budget, and the response mentioned that we were getting other funding somehow. So I'm hoping you could just provide more information on that. The second question was about the big stables. Again, thank you for the response to the email. It mentioned that, I just wanted to clarify, it sounded like the basic renovations or maintenance repairs that had been done, and I'm not sure. Could you sort of elaborate on that and perhaps give an indication of when it might be ready for at least some kind of interim projects to take place, even if we haven't settled on an exact use yet? And the third question was about the drainage. And thank you for explaining those 4 different asset classes. That was very helpful. We have all of our different flood studies, and each of those studies looks at, sort of areas of concern and proposes mitigations. But I know that there's just so many of them, and they're so expensive that it's hard to actually get a sense of any of those are ever completed. Is it possible to get an update? Like, what happens with those? Because we get I've had so many complaints about, flooding on our roadways, impacting private properties during heavy downpours, and obviously it's very expensive. There's many, many of these. I'm just wondering, is there allocation for those jobs? Like, perhaps you could just elaborate on that a bit, because I've definitely got residents who will be expectantly hoping to have something this year, but I just don't know how that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. So there's a question in relation to the SES project, stables and drainage. Director of City Services.
Thank you. Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and remain consistent with the responses provided, and if there's any further to elaborate, just happy to clarify. In relation to the SES, a few years ago now, Council did resolve to commence a planning pathway or a planning proposal for the site in which we found down the south of the LGA, just off Botany Road there, that would be the feasible location for a new SES headquarters. That particular site is sort of broken into 2 parcels of land, and essentially the intended use of an SES facility is not cognizant of one of the zonings of one of those parcels of land, so we were looking to commence that planning or rezoning proposal, for that slither, if you like, of land out there. We are in the process of commencing that project now. The resolution of Council was to come back to Council to seek adoption of that proposal before we proceed any further. In line with the response to Councillors, the team is currently working on the procurement phase for that consultant. for the rezoning proposal, and once it's due to be completed this year, and we'll come back to council seeking adoption to adopt that proposal through the appropriate pathway for such an exercise. I would say in terms of the funding opportunity, that project will be a considerable amount or funds. So you're talking probably no less than $5 to $10 million for a project of that scale and complexity. So that is something that we'll work with the SES and government on to fund that project, noting that council is essentially giving up a parcel of land for the headquarters to be relocated to. In relation to item 2, the big stables. So that is a complex project. We have completed what we refer to as sort of make safe works for that facility. So to ensure that while we look at the feasibility of future intended use, it's safe by way of fire protection and security. To name two measures. But what we have just recently completed is a feasibility on future uses. We've looked at a whole range of intended uses that are cognizant with the building footprint and structure. What we've found is obviously the building use is heavily reliant on the structure and our ability, given its heritage significance, and it's quite landlocked there, we can't do a lot with the building itself, so we're referred to in the response to councillors as we're very close, or we've completed a design for the base build. That means reinstating the whole building to 100% structural capacity with the ability to use that facility for certain activities that aren't at the detriment of the building condition. So we also looked at what could be bolted on, if you like, to the building. Can you put a lift in? Can you put an adjoining kitchen on the external of the building, all within the land zonings and restrictions out there? So that process is done, and what the consultant has said is essentially we should focus immediately on getting that building, similar to Blenheim House, up to a suitable quality. That again will be a significant funding exercise, and what we're looking to do is come back to council this year with that funding strategy and a recommendation to proceed with the bill. Final point that councillor mentioned is in the drainage, and correctly pointed out that we do have flood studies across the LGA, and I suppose the rate at which works can be completed to the need of the community is difficult. Those flood studies do identify short to medium works that councils, when I say councils, it's not just Randwick, but this is a common approach that councils can implement to try and mitigate some impact of flooding, but not all in some instances, unfortunately. So what we have in the budget for this year, councillors, I'll go back to the drainage program. We have the 100,000, the 1.1 million, and the Harold Street. So we've got nearly 2.4, just under $3 million worth of work that is as a result of flood studies, and that is for those short-term minor improvements like we have done in the past at Anzac Parade at Malabar to try and alleviate some of the impact of either minor flooding or flash flooding to residents. But we do see areas across the city that those flood studies do note works are of a much larger scale that do require the input of the state government to upgrade major network connections and the like that are beyond all councils' ability to alleviate flooding issues.
Thank you. Councillor Magna.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Chief Financial Officer. Thanks again for an excellent presentation. I had some questions in relation to the budget tolerances that are built in, which you guided us through, but also interested to understand how much work you do across the different departments within the council, specifically the resilience strategy that's looking at some of the anticipated shocks and stresses that our council community can expect as a result of weather events, climate change, social disruption and other unforeseen stresses, and whether or not there's an opportunity, perhaps it's not in line with the Office of Local Government Guidelines, but how much is your budget resilience strategy factoring in the indicators that the resilience team has identified that we can anticipate in the future.
Okay.
Thank you. Through to the Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this year we had the opportunity to rebase all our budgets. So each team within the council had the opportunity to put forward what their initiatives and their objectives were. The resilience part of the strategy was included as part of the prioritisation of what went through and what got prioritised in terms of funding. So in terms of the resilience team, they would have put forward some actions, some objectives, and some funding that would be able to support that type of initiatives. And what the council does as part of the overall budget strategy and prioritisation is to allocate that a little bit higher than previous years.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Rosenfeld.
Yeah, my question's to the Director of City Services.
Thank you, Stephen. Director of City Services. Thank you.
Okay, Todd, you said that the Maroubra Road corridor as far as Mons Avenue, Cooper Street and Maroubra Road, we're now into the design phase. When do you expect will be finished the design phase and can tender out for construction?
Through to the Director of City Services.
Yeah, thank you, through yourself, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, we are hopefully, I believe the program, and I can confirm this tomorrow, but we're looking to have most of the design work or conceptual design finished around April, May, and then we're looking to go out potentially for an earlier procurement on some of that, some of those works to commence, mid-year for those projects, and then run from mid-year, just continue all the way through to have Cooper Mons first, Flower just start straight away. So once we're out on Maroubra Road, we're hoping not to leave.
Are we looking to design those concurrently?
Yeah.
I'd actually design them concurrently.
Yep, so the design
Through
works
to
is
the
both,
Sure.
which is construction will start one after the other,
One
but
after
yeah,
the other.
the consultant is doing both at the same time.
So I'll start around mid-year,
Yep.
roughly, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sid, your question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's a question to the Director of City Services as well. You did mention some of the projects that in the building program that are due for this year, but will we, and I know the question was asked today, will we be getting where the funding's at for most of the open spaces, just about everything, the open spaces, the buildings, the roads, the drainage, where the funding's at per year and when the ones that we ticked off that actually will be done this year? Will something like that come
Yeah.
forward?
Through to the Director of City Services
Yeah,
or
through-
to the Director of Corporate Appropriate? The Director of City Services?
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. The slide that you see on the screen is the summary, but we have firstly the 26-27, which we now refer to as year one of Council's 4-year program, which breaks the program down into projects that are in planning and then projects that will go into construction. But Council will also very soon receive the 4-year program to see where projects will land over the next 4 years as well.
Thank you. Councillor Willington, I'll then go back to Councillor Veach.
Thank you. My question is about, in relation to the Chief Financial Officer's discussion of shocks and unexpected shocks and expenses. The intense New Year gathering at Coogee was an unplanned event and a shock to the system for council, and whilst I really appreciate the fact that council officers did everything they could to anticipate it and make provision for it, the actual event was pretty intense. And the first part of the question is, what was the cost of the clean-up?
Through to the Chief Financial Officer.
Okay. So I'll answer this in terms of the first part, and I'll hand over to the Director of City Services.
I've got a second part to the question.
Okay. So shocks like that are not that unexpected because a clean-up is quite normal to have at Coogee anyway. The size and scale of the labour and the disposal was beyond our expectations. So what we do at council as part of our budget objectives is to look at savings within first. Okay. If those savings within cannot be matched through the Director of City Services. We look at council-wide to see if there's any savings there. If there's no savings to be found because the quantum is too high, then you'll see that appear in our quarterly budget review statement for council approval. In terms of quantum of the expenses, I'll hand over to the City.
Through to the Director of City Services.
Thank you. Through yourself, Mr Mayor. Councillors, we do have a report coming to the Fed meeting which does break down the costings, but roughly about 100,000 for that clean-up. That includes the staff overheads, the tonnage, disposal of waste, security, digital signage, and just to name a few. But you will get a report to the coming council meeting on that matter.
Yep, thanks. And then the follow-up from
So
Councillor Warrington.
my follow-up question to that is, should we be thinking about budgeting for the costs of a New Year clean-up or provision for New Year at Coogee in some way so that we're not shocked in the coming New Year?
Thank you. Through to the Director of City Services.
I'm happy to be corrected if I answer this wrong, Mr CFO, but it's essentially will be a matter for council, and that's the essence of the report coming to the next meeting is to the risk appetite, if you like, of council for future years and how we do control to an extent. Control is probably a strong word, but how we do respond to potential events, how we work with other agencies, other levels of government to try and combat that. I'm sure from Stephen's fine budgeting skills, the shock we may be okay for next year, but we'll be cognisant over the next couple of months as we essentially get a resolution from councillors to the direction you'd like us to take next year, and that will be decided on not in a full effect, but essentially working with other agencies in the government and how you like us to tackle 2026.
Thank you. Councillor Veitch.
Thank you. This would be for, I'm not sure, the Director of City Services or the CFO. Will we get an update on our community, our future projects? Because I think we're only a couple of years before, 10 years since since that rate levy came through, and it would just be good to get an update on all the projects that have completed and what the timeline is for the remaining ones.
Thank you. Through to the Director of City Services.
Thank you. Through yourself, Mr Mayor. Council, most definitely same practice will stay in place for previous years, aligned with the 4-year capital works program that comes to council. We do provide an update of our community, our future program that was communicated to the community. We are thankfully well into that program. We've delivered a considerable amount of projects on that list, and we still have quite a few in planning that, as we see on the list tonight, will come to fruition even in the coming financial year. And then what is left is largely on that list, as council will see, is projects that the brief wasn't as developed as the projects for the earlier stages that council asked us to prioritise. So some of the I wouldn't say larger projects, but projects that probably do require a little bit more community feedback and consultation before we set off on design or planning. But a full detailed update will again be provided to councils this year.
Thank you. Before I close the questioning, are there any further questions from councillors? Gone. Thank you. Can I please, I'll now put it. All those that the recommendation on the business paper that it be read and noted. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. We now move to GAC/number 2/26 management of shared e-bikes update. Do I have a mover of the recommendation? Thank you. In relation to? It is a proper meeting in relation to that. It's already been noted. Okay, thank you. I'll take that as a point of order, just in relation to that. Can I please have a mover that the recommendation on the business paper be noted? Moved Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Rosenfeld. The first question from Councillor Martin. Could the Director of City Services please elaborate on their report?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the slide deck that I will present to tonight is as per the business paper. I'll talk to the high level points and then through the Mayor give the opportunity for councillors to ask questions. I have both the Manager of Engineering, Manager of Compliance here, both working on this or tasked with working on this particular project and the management of share bikes. So between the three of us we should be able to answer any questions. If not, we'll take your questions on notice. But councillors, the essence of this particular presentation tonight is to give you an update. Last year we come to council with a bit of a summary on the management of e-bikes and give you an update of where council's at with some of those action items that we said we were going to do, and where we're waiting on the government to essentially the big piece to unlock the regulations for the new legislation, which will allow us to go into agreements with providers. But we'll provide an update on those two in this slide deck. Councillors, importantly, on the screen, you'll see, I want to say the exponential increase, but the considerable increase of the number of trips over the last couple of years of e-bikes. You'll see there, this data has been derived from Transport for New South Wales. But last year, over 600,000 trips on e-bikes, which has essentially tripled since 2023. So we are seeing the mode being heavily utilised. Similarly, the number of bikes deployed by the organisations double in that time period as well. So we could sort of say demand's going up for this mode, and regulation is very much important. What are we seeing? And not preaching to the choir here, we all see the e-bikes and some of the issues that we are experiencing with them, albeit that they're quite popular at the moment. But the parking, the unsafe and inconvenient parking, where people are leaving some of the bikes, obstructing footpaths and road reserves and the like. We're most definitely seeing that go up with the number of trips, and that's centralised or heat mapped in the town centres. So we're using that information to be proactive in how we, as a council, tackle e-bikes in the next couple of months, and that project is very much underway. And just to remind everyone, the state government had introduced an amendment to the legislation in 2025 to essentially allow councils to go into and the Transport New South Wales, to go into agreements with providers. But we'll talk to in a sec, just still waiting for that regulation to be released to do so. But in the meantime, we've started a working group internally at council, as mentioned, with Duncan and his team, Eva and her team in engineering, and our waste cleansing and public safety teams, who are all out there in the operational field day to day to tackle this particular issue. So since that councillors' resolution, which essentially brought everything, all the outstanding items into one resolution, if you like, from in relation to e-bikes. The key points of that resolution in March 2025 was that council was to work with their providers to improve the level of service in resolving immediate issues. And I can say that we are continuing and still do meet with the providers. The teams are having regular and recurring meetings with two providers to make sure they're maintaining a high service level. We're still experiencing issues, but I would say they are being more responsive to our calls, and they have what they refer to as a compliance team, I believe, or an officer that goes out and looks at issues themselves, trying to implement a proactive approach to some of the matters. But we are most definitely still meeting them on an ongoing basis, and not waiting for any sort of regulation change or legislation change. Very importantly, which we'll talk to in a sec, the identification of areas for geofencing and preferred parking spots. So I'll go into that particular action, which is very important, on the next slide. And then investigate contractual and/or agreements with shared e-bike providers, which again we've identified the hotspots, the parking demand, the designated parking bay areas in line with the geofencing requirements, based off not only that government data that you're seeing, but our own data, our own visual inspections, our own operational staff feedback. So when the time comes to go into an agreement with an operator, if council should choose to do so, we very much have the plan for that operator to abide by. And in addition, dissuade any, item E is dissuade any further providers. So at the moment, we still remain with 2 main operators in the LGA. And council will be kept informed of Transport for New South Wales developments, and that's essentially what we're here to do tonight. So just on the parking, which is a major component in preparation for entering into any sort of agreement with any bike provider and managing the current issues as well. And this is what staff are meeting with in that working group, meeting with on a regular basis to try and get some of these things implemented straight away and not wait for that agreement. But through the complaints and statistics and our own visual observations, obviously the town centres are at our front of mind: Coogee, Randwick, Kensington, Kingsford, Maroubra, and we're looking at geofencing. So essentially that's a way from a technology perspective, of restricting access to certain areas, and that access differs based off the restriction or geofence zone. So you can see, well, it's hard to see, I apologise, councillors, just on the screen and the colours, but we've got no-go zones, no parking zones, and mandatory parking zones, which is coloured, and it might be a bit difficult to see there. But nonetheless, we are identifying those areas. So areas you cannot go in at all, areas in which you can't park a bike, and areas which you must park a bike, to try and clean up and have a bit of a systematic approach to the way that these assets are being managed. So then what's important for this to be successful is the provision of parking spaces, whether it's in stencils, preferred parking and signed parking bays in and around those town centre areas. And councillors, we have nearly 100 identified spaces. I think we're up to about 90 spaces, so we're very close to having 100 designated parking bays identified in anticipation for those government requirements. And as I mentioned, they most definitely are not just based off any e-bike or any company data. It's based off council data and council heat mapping as well. So it's not just what the operator feels would be feasible for their operations, but more so what council deems is appropriate for our community. Councillors, this matter will come to council in February as well. So we'll elaborate on what are some of the criteria that goes into the identification of a suitable parking space for a bike. So we're not just dropping these designated areas in zones that are not feasible for local shops and the community, or they restrict access, but they're in consideration of how people are currently using the bikes, where they need to go to get to the next mode of transport or that destination, but also maintaining accessibility for the community. So in the council report that you will receive, we will look at the different hierarchy, if you like, of how we identify those spaces, whether they're on street, which is our first preference, they're off streets, they're on a verge or a grassed area, or they become part of a street furniture zone where we're sectioning off areas with different devices or planter boxes to house parking bays. So we've got a set of criteria that we apply for each of those 100 spaces to make sure that they're just not dropped willy-nilly or at the discretion of a provider without council saying this is where we're happy for you to have those. So full criteria will be provided to council and the community in the next month. But councillor, lastly, in terms of the state government actions, operators, under the new bill, operators must obtain approval from Transport for New South Wales and authorisation from council to operate within an LGA. We will have then powers to authorise the operators to be in the Randwick City Council areas, and then set importantly local conditions that are suitable for us here in our community at Randwick. And then should the operators under those agreements not abide by those service levels, then we have the ability to issue penalties and fines for non-compliance. So what's next, councillors? We are just waiting. So whilst the bill is through, we're waiting for the framework, so to speak, that allows this to be implemented in full effect. What we're doing in the meantime, importantly, is is firstly finalising that list of 100. We're very close of parking spaces. We're going to undertake in February a community consultation exercise on those locations and geofencing, so we're ready when the time comes and we can enter into a form of tender or agreement to include that community sentiment in that, so it's specific to the community need. And before we do any of that, we'll report back to council on that data and that information. We've got the risks identified there, councillors, which I think we're all well around. We are experiencing, the conflict between public road use and private property, most definitely the town centre accessibility issues, just dumping. But also, I think it's important from a risk perspective to work with the operators to come up with a solution that suits everyone. That's the presentation, councillors. I now pass to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have any questions of the Director of City Services? I have a hand up from Councillor Veach. Do I have any further questions in relation to this report? Councillor Burst. Any further? Councillor Luxford. Councillor Veach.
Thank you. Didn't quite relate to this report, but I had a motion at the end of last year, which admittedly was not that long ago, about getting training courses in local schools, and also there was interest from the local police area command and sort of communities. Would it be possible to get an update on that, if not tonight, but then fairly soon?
Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. So through to the Director of City Services. Just before I do that, I will indulge it because it is the first Governance Advisory Committee, but I just do want to flag that all questions need to relate to the matters which are on the agenda. However, as is the first one, of course, through to the Director of City Services.
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. I was poorly timed at the last council meeting, Council, when you brought that motion. I was just about to receive information that council was participating in the program which the motion related to for the training. So I was just a bit slow to provide that update on the night. But we most definitely, council along with, there was I think 2 other councils that are participating in the training program in the scheme. We're one of 3. So I'll give an update exactly. I believe we might have had something in the bulletin already, but we'll look at that and come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Yep.
Training programs in
Councillor
schools, I
Veach.
think.
Yeah, it was these particular courses, and they get like a little licence, and it's quite helpful. Is that the one?
I believe so, yeah. I'll come back
Thank
with
you.
an update.
Councillor Burst.
To the Director of City Services. Todd, my question is on page 37, the background data. So that obviously comes from the provider to Transport New South Wales, and then that data gets fed back to the council. Is that correct? Is that how we receive that data? And that analysis?
Through to the Director of City Services.
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor, other than council obtaining the data from Transport, I couldn't 100% confirm now as to where Transport get that information, but I can most definitely come back to you.
Thank you. I have a hand up from Councillor Luxford. I'll then go to Councillor Martin.
So my question is, we've got on the here on the no-go zones and the parking bays, etc. But how is this actually going to help people in residential streets where the bikes pile up? And will there be, there won't be parking bays, I don't imagine, in every residential street throughout the city. So how is this going to help the residents who get bikes lumped either outside their front gates or on their front grass or wherever that inconveniences them?
Thank you. Through to the Director of City Services.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll answer this and then I'll pass to our Manager of Compliance if I have missed anything. But we are most definitely focusing, just in the first instance now, on town centres based off the data that we have. But what I would say, that framework that will be released that allows council to enter into an arrangement with a provider will specify service levels that don't just relate to town centres. So should a provider leave or allow an asset, a bike asset, to be left in front of someone's driveway in a residential street that's not in a town centre, they need to move that device after being notified based off a service level that council stipulates in that agreement, and should they not do so, in that I'm sure we can then offer compliance and enforcement. Anything you'd like to add to that?
The draft regulations will set out the
Do you want to jump up here?
Thank you. The Manager of Compliance.
Thank you, councillors. So we are aware that that the draft regulations will provide council with enforcement capabilities over two areas, one being parking enforcement and the other being helmet-related offences. We await the draft regulations to see exactly what our enforcement capabilities are. But with specific regard to, I would suggest that the initial prioritisation of 100 spaces, that's a dynamic list, so that's evolving. We're not intending to stop at 100. That's our prioritisation area based on usage data we've received from Transport for New South Wales. As the Director of City Services alluded to as well, the hierarchy of controls we use to assess the locations where we apply parking bays has within it a no-go zone filter. And part of that no-go zone filter for approved parking spaces is single-dwelling residential frontages. So we are taking that into consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Yes, you say you've had 4 meetings held with shared e-bike providers. Could you tell me whether there's ever been conversations up to date about the volume or the number of bikes that are released into our areas?
Through to the Director of City Services or the Manager of... Through to the appropriate officer.
I could take that on notice, Councillor. I don't necessarily think what we're trying to achieve in these conversations is something that we pallet. Like I don't, if they ask to bring in a whole ton more or another provider, as per the council resolutions, we're trying to dissuade that. If they're putting in more bikes, I think they updated their bikes to a new type of bike, a lighter bike in the last sort of 6 months. But yeah, I don't believe we've had any sort of council officer imposed restrictions on volume as yet, but that's something that we'll definitely communicate with council when we set the parameters inside that agreement.
Thank you. Follow up from Councillor Martin.
Is there any reason why we can't have those conversations now while we're waiting for the state government regulations to come in? That we have a conversation with the providers saying, can we limit the amount of bikes that we have in our areas?
Through to the relevant officer.
Yeah, if council would like to, when this comes back to council and you know, I dare say set a limit or ask us to do so, then we're happy to have those conversations with them.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? There being no further questions, I'll now put it that council read and note the report. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Thank you. We now move into closed session. Thank you. Sorry. Actually, there's been a request just for let's do a 5-minute adjournment just for a bathroom break, and then we will return at 8:20 p.m. sharp. For those who are listening online, particularly members of the public, the last item on the agenda is in fact in closed session. So there are no further public items on the agenda. I now adjourn the Governance Advisory Committee at 8:16 p.m. A C3/26 is that the recommendation that the report be read and noted was carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you. There being no further business for the Governance Advisory Committee meeting, I now close the Governance Advisory Committee meeting for the 10th of February 2026. Councillor Hamilton, if you could please, of course, stay on the line as we'll be proceeding straight into the training session in the new Code of Meeting Practice being offered by the Director of Corporate Services. Thank you.